So if you actually look at, well, what exactly is carnitine doing? It's all about mitochondria. Researchers actually supplemented children's diet with some meat. It wasn't even a lot, just a little bit of meat. And it was a randomized controlled trial. Hundreds of kids. Half of them did not get the extra meat. Half of them got the extra meat. The ones who got the meat had higher IQs, statistically significant higher IQs.
So what is it about mitochondria that leads to mental disorders? So what is it about mitochondria that leads to mental disorders?
So this was one of the key parts of developing this theory. And because the more I read about mitochondria, I hadn't seen anyone really try to break it into concrete kind of clear pathways of like, what happens when mitochondria aren't functioning in a cell? Like, what are the consequences of that? I saw literally thousands of research articles. Almost all of them would focus on one aspect or another, or maybe a few, and they would quickly get lost in the weeds of complexity, like all of these biochemical pathways, like this enzyme produces this molecule, which then goes to this part of the cell and triggers this receptor. And they tell that part of the story, but that's a tiny part of the story. And so when I was developing this theory, I tried to read all of these articles, but always stepping back and trying to see the bigger picture. Like, how can we make sense of this? And how can I help other people understand this? And so at the end of the day, I've identified 5 clear consequences of mitochondrial dysfunction. 2 of them are, and I go into detail in the book, but 2 of them are particularly important to answer your question. How does mitochondrial dysfunction result in mental illness? I'll actually mention 3. So one of them is that mitochondria play a critical role in neurodevelopment. And that means some people with neurodevelopmental disorders, like autism, may have had metabolic or mitochondrial problems as they were developing. And that resulted in a neurodevelopmental disorder like autism, or like a learning disorder or epilepsy or something else. And a lot of people think, that's one of the criticisms I've gotten is, well, if this is all metabolic, what does autism have to do with diet? There's no connection there. These are kids. These kids were drinking breast milk. How are you blaming diet on autism? But let me share one quick statistic to help clear that up. I didn't do this in the book, so I'll share it with you now. Mothers who are diabetic and obese have 3 to 4 times the rate of having an autistic child. Men who are obese have double the chances of having an autistic child. In case you didn't know it, we have epidemics of obesity and diabetes in our population, and that includes people who are having kids. So when people are like, where the hell is all this autism coming from? Because autism rates have tripled in the last 20 years. And everybody's scratching their heads. Where is all this autism coming from? That can't possibly be true. And people must be making this shit up. They're just overdiagnosing autism. What I'm here to say is, no, they're not overdiagnosing autism. They are accurately diagnosing autism. Where is it coming from? It's coming from the obesity and metabolic epidemics that are occurring in our population and in those people's parents. And so neurodevelopment is one of the things. The bigger consequences of mitochondrial dysfunction are that, in a nutshell, cells can become underactive or overactive. And that's a paradox. It really is a paradox that cells can become underactive or overactive. But that was actually the critical piece of developing this theory and helping us understand so much about, like, why do some of our metabolically toxic treatments reduce symptoms. That paradox actually helps us understand that. But when I say underactive, so brain cells can be underactive or overactive, or they can be normal. So if they're normal, that means you're healthy. You're doing your thing. You are a normal human being. Everybody looking at you thinks you're a normal person. You're just doing your stuff. Doesn't mean you don't get depressed or anxious. Everybody gets depressed and anxious. If bad stuff happens to you or if somebody threatens you, that all happens. That's normal. But an underactive brain system might result in, parts of your brain that should be helping you concentrate or pay attention, maybe underactive. And if those brain areas are underactive, it might result in symptoms that we call attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Or if memory cells that are supposed to be helping you store memories, if those are underactive, it means that you're going to be forgetful or maybe have memory impairment.
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys.
Overactive cells, a clear example is that we all have anxiety pathways in our brain. If those cells are metabolically compromised and hyper excitable or overactive, it means that you could have anxiety or a panic attack out of the blue for no reason. And that would get diagnosed as anxiety or an anxiety disorder. I'll stop there, but obviously I could go on and on and on about all of this. So I'm sorry if I'm long-winded.
No, not at all. No, it's all very interesting. And, it's interesting that you mentioned autism and diet as well, because that's something that when I started looking into, carnivore diet or biologically appropriate diet, if this was carnivore, and what that meant, and I started asking questions, and I started asking questions of the literature, and I said, okay, if this is true, if my theory is true, we should see X in the literature. And so I started looking, and one of my thoughts was, is autism related to diet? Because like you say, it's tripled in the last few decades. That has matched the increase in other metabolic diseases and heart disease, diabetes, even cancer, autoimmune disorders, all these things. They all sort of started going up around the same time. So I started asking myself, okay, is autism diet related as well? And I started looking in the literature, and I thought, okay, well, could it be with sugar? Could it be with metabolic issues? Could it be with, avoiding meat, going away from this? And so I actually found a number of studies. There was one that looked at the diet of women preconception, and they found 14 foods that all showed a significant reduction in their, correlated with less children having autism. All of them were meat-based. Then women that had higher saturated fat intake and LDL cholesterol during pregnancy had lower rates of children with autism. Women who breastfed versus bottle fed, lower rates of children with autism. They didn't distinguish between pumping and formula, but quite a lot of people who do bottle feed would use formula, which is a lot of cornstarch and sugar as opposed to the normal ingredients in breast milk. And then the other one I thought was very interesting. All of these are obviously correlative, but there was one that actually showed a stronger link and even a causative link from Texas A&M that found that there was an increased rate of autism in people who were vegetarian and vegan. And they found that this was due to lack of carnitine, that some children were deficient in making carnitine. Obviously, this is something we consider a non-essential amino acid, but not everybody, but it's not unessential to everyone. And so this doesn't exist in plants, carnitine. And so we have to get it from meat if we need it. And so these kids, if they're not making enough carnitine and they're not getting it in the meat, then they can get neural misdevelopment. And so I thought that was very interesting. So I thought that was very interesting, seeing that you found that relationship between neurodevelopmental issues such as autism and diet as well, or
Absolutely.
metabolism.
And well, and to support in support of everything you just said. So carnitine is actually critical to mitochondrial function.
Hmm.
And so if you actually look at, well, what exactly is carnitine doing? It's all about mitochondria. It's all about getting nutrients and fats into mitochondria so that they can process fat as a fuel source. But it's also about their normal function. And to take it back, just so people know, because you mentioned a lot of correlational studies, they're dating back to the 1980s. Researchers have identified mitochondrial deficits in people with autism spectrum disorders. So in the 1980s, the mitochondrial theory of autism was actually first proposed. And numerous researchers have continued to build on that and continue, like the evidence just keeps accumulating and all of the different factors. It's not that there is one and only one cause of autism or one and only one cause of mitochondrial dysfunction. There are numerous causes. And again, they include biological, psychological, and social. Absolutely, though, diet is a key player in metabolism and mitochondrial function. There is no way around it. Diet is critical. And when you look at all of the different risk factors for autism spectrum disorder, they all converge on mitochondria. So it makes perfect sense. I think in support of what you're saying, like even going beyond autism, I mean, there was a study, I think it was done in India, where a lot of people are vegan or vegetarian. And researchers actually supplemented children's diet with some meat. It wasn't even a lot, just a little bit of meat early in life. And it was a randomized controlled trial. Half the kids, hundreds of kids, half of them did not get the extra meat. Half of them got the extra meat. The ones who got the meat had higher IQs, statistically significant higher IQs. Wow. And those researchers actually said it is unconscionable that we are not giving meat to all kids. And it is unconscionable that we are talking about plant-based diets when this like impacts brain development and cognition and intelligence.
Yeah, I think I saw a similar study. Maybe it was that one, but they gave these kids one egg. Just one egg a day seemed to make a statistically significant difference in their IQ, which is amazing. You know, I mean, just that little.
It is
much.
Eggs are like, I think so. You know, there was a social media meme going around. Eggs are like a multivitamin. Yeah, they've got lots of nutrients in them.
Yeah. And you should just take them like that. I mean, like, I'm just taking my vitamins.
Yeah. Exactly.